morning everyone, and welcome to our service this morning. Today we're going to be thinking about the old and the new. Here you can see something very old, our church wall. So old in fact that a section of it has fallen down recently, and we're trying to build a new section of the wall. Unfortunately it's a complicated and expensive job, but we'll get there. Jesus told a story once to teach people about old and new things. In Jesus' day, people drank their wine, not out of a bottle, but out of wineskins. Containers made from the skins of animals. And here you can see some from a museum collection. It's a little bit sad, isn't it? Because you can still see the little feet on the skins. And in Jesus' day, these were probably made from the skins of goats. So when you first had a wineskin and put wine in, the wineskin would have been soft and supple and flexible, but over time the skin changes. It becomes harder and less flexible, more rigid and more easily cracked and split. Jesus reminded people that when you have new wine, which is still changing and fermenting and giving off gas, and that'll make it expand and get bigger, that you must put new wine into a new wineskin that's able to flex and change as the wine grows. If you put new wine into an old wineskin that's getting a bit stiff, the old wineskin will split and crack and the wine will be spilt all over the floor. New wine needed to go into new wineskins, which would hold it and keep it nice until it was ready to drink. We'll think a little bit more about that later and what it might mean for us today. But firstly, let's say these words together and then sing. Do join in with the words in red. From each new rising of the sun to the setting of the same, the name of the Lord is to be praised. The steadfast love of the Lord never fails. His mercies are new every morning. The grass withers and the flowers fall, but the word of our God stands forever. Faithful God, as your dawn renews the face of the earth, you bring light and life to all creation. This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it.
To bring him praise. Come all and tune your hearts to sing to the morning star of grace. From the shifting shadows of the earth we will lift our eyes to him, where steady arms of mercy reach to gather children in. Rejoice, rejoice, let every tongue rejoice. One heart, one voice, O Church of Christ, rejoice. Come those whose joy is morning sun, and those weeping through the night. Come those who tell our battles won, and those struggling in the fight. For his perfect love will never change, and his mercies never cease, but follow us through all our days with the certain hope of peace. Rejoice, rejoice, let every tongue rejoice. One heart, one voice, O Church of Christ, rejoice. full or empty hands find the riches of His grace. Over all the world His people sing, shore to shore we hear them call. The truth that cries through every age, our God is all in all. Rejoice, rejoice, let every tongue rejoice. One heart, one voice, O Church of Christ, rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, let every tongue rejoice. One heart, one voice, O Church of Christ, rejoice.
Sometimes when things get old, we throw them away. I think my socks might need to go in the bin. Now, I do know that my grandmother, and certainly her mum, wouldn't have thrown these socks in the bin. They'd have darned them. But you know what? I have no idea how to darn a sock, and I don't think I ever really need or want to learn. So, YOLO and all that, off my sock comes, and I'm going to throw it in the bin. And I don't know about in your house, but in ours we have a lot of odd socks. So to try and reduce the risk of that happening, I'm going to take off the other one, which is also a little bit worn, and pop it in the bin. Sometimes when things get old, we mend them, a bit like our church wall. We need to mend our church wall because it's the bottom part of our graveyard, and we don't want our churchyard falling into the road at the bottom. That would be a terrible thing. So we need to mend our wall. Sometimes something new is invented which is better than the old, and we stop using the old. Our phones look like this now. But when I was a little girl, a little while ago now, they used to look like this. Have a look at this video where two 17-year-old boys were challenged to make a phone call using an old phone.
Okay, so go ahead and lift up the box. You have 4 minutes to dial that phone number.
That's it?
That's it. With that phone.
Wait, so you have to push it, right?
Kyle, move your butt over. I don't want your butt in the
My
video.
fingers don't...
Look,
There you go.
Look. It's all the way from here.
Yeah. 7.
Oh no, zero's all the way over. Crap, how do I restart?
Okay.
Right here. Alright.
7. Then just fill it a little bit.
Maybe.
Okay. All the way around. There you go. 8. 7. No, 0. All the way around.
Okay, so I'll give you a hint. Your 0 is correct. Every other way you're doing it is incorrect. Is that correct in saying it that way?
Yeah. So you don't stop at this. Oh, does the last one? Because look.
You just successfully dialed 0.
No. Stop. Okay. So.
Wait. So when we go like this, they said that was right.
Wait.
Does the second
Look,
one?
watch out.
Does the second
Is this
one
correct?
zero?
Bring it all the way around and then like. Bruh.
You guys have made this all worth it.
Everyone has struggled like you guys.
Yeah, everybody
Yes.
has.
I think of different.
Wait a minute.
Think of different.
Do we have to pick up the phone and then do it?
Put the phone to your ear. What do you hear? What does that sound like? Okay, that's a start.
Alright, watch out.
Incorrect. Correct for a 0.
What does 0 sound like? What does 0 sound like?
It just goes and ends it. Okay.
You have 1 minute left.
Stop there.
What's with all the holes though?
Oh,
It's a great
Oh.
question. It is. Kyle?
We are so done.
No, you're not. You
Nope, Kyle
nailed
just
it.
figured it out. 25 seconds.
Tell me the numbers.
708, 703. Where are you at right now?
7,
Oh.
0.
8500.
Hurry up.
What is it?
8500. 8500.
11:10.
We're done.
Oh, you did it?
Yeah, no, I didn't. It just. There's
Yep.
5 seconds to do it.
0.
You did it.
0. We did it.
But what about church? Church is quite old, isn't it, as an institution? Some people think the church is past its sell-by date. Some people think church needs mending and putting back to how it used to be. Some people think that we need something that does a similar job but looks quite different. I wonder what you think. Here's something else that helps me to think about the old and the new in church. Have you ever wondered what it might be like to be in a lifeboat on rough seas rescuing people who are in trouble? Terrifying is one word that springs to mind. Have a look at this. Wow. I know that I would never be brave enough to do that, but I'm so grateful that other people are. In such rough seas, you can imagine how easy it would be for a small boat to get flipped over. Amazing inventors have designed and built lifeboats that can turn themselves the right way up if they capsize in high seas. They do this by putting everything heavy, like the engine and the rescue equipment, at the bottom of the boat to weigh it down, and they make the top of the boat as light and airy as possible. If the boat turns over, the heavy bottom helps to pull it upright again, and the cabin quickly locks and becomes fully watertight to protect the poor crew whilst they're upside down. Jesus and the disciples sailed on boats thousands of years ago, as did people thousands of years before that. The amazing snazzy new lifeboat designers knew that we still needed a boat. They knew they couldn't just patch up old boats to do the job, but nor did they turn their backs on what was so simple and brilliant about the design of the earliest boats. They built on the original great idea of a boat, used modern thinking and adapted it and made it fit for purpose. And lifeboats are so brilliant because the inventors always have just two very simple things in mind. Firstly, we don't control the sea. The sea does its own thing, doesn't it? It's big and it's scary at times and much, much stronger than us. Secondly, the lifeboat is there to rescue people. That's its job. Nothing else. To me, this gives clues as to what a great church in the modern era should look like. Everything we do, all our buildings, all our activities, need to keep the two most important things in mind. And these are that, as with the sea, we are not in control. God is. It's His church. Secondly, the church is about people. Full stop. Worshipping God together and really loving each other. And we don't do great modern church by throwing away the old church. And we don't do it by just trying to patch up the old bits to keep it looking the same. Nor do we look for something that appears so different to the old design that it's unrecognisable and our young people can't understand it. No, we continually redesign the church in a way that honours the only two things that really matter: God and people. Okay, so how do we design the modern day church to do this? Well, that's another big question for another day. It's enough for us today to think long and hard about the continual need to update our design. And when we've understood that, well, that's when the fun begins. I will leave you with one thought about the how, however. Jesus probably gave us some pretty big clues as to how to do church. He told stories. He told stories to everyone, to children, to his friends, the disciples, to the old, to those he didn't get on with very well, to everyone. Gripping real life stories, and usually quite short. This is one of his stories now retold. So this story is called Basil and the Secateurs. Once there was a beautiful grapevine, and on that vine lived a branch named Basil. Basil looked at his leaf and said, "What a lovely, luscious leaf." He twirled his tendrils. What terrific, trendy tendrils. He gazed at his grapes. What giant, juicy grapes. Basil was a happy branch. Suddenly, a dark shadow fell, and there stood the gardener. And in the gardener's hand, no, not the secateurs. Ah! Cried Basil. Snip! Basil slowly opened his eyes. He was still alive. He looked for his lovely, luscious leaf. It was gone. I've been pruned, groaned Basil. But Basil was not one to let things get him down. Well, at least I have my terrific, trendy tendrils and my giant, juicy grapes, he said. Then the dark shadow fell again. There stood the gardener, and in the gardener's hand, no, not the secateurs. Ah! Cried Basil. Snip! Basil opened his eyes. He was still alive. He tried to twirl his terrific, trendy tendrils, but they were gone. Oh, I've been pruned, groaned Basil. But Basil refused to let things get him down. Well, at least I still have my giant, juicy grapes, he said. Then the dark shadow fell. There stood the gardener, and in the gardener's hands, no, not the secateurs. Ah! Cried Basil. Snip! Oh, Basil opened his eyes and gazed at where his giant, juicy grapes had been. They were gone. Oh, I've been pruned, groaned Basil. Basil was down. Then Basil heard a voice. Hi, Basil. He looked up. There was the grapevine, and on the grapevine's face was a big smile. Basil, I'm the vine and you are the branch. The gardener prunes every branch that has grapes so that next summer you will produce even more grapes. Ah, sighed Basil. And sure enough, when the next summer came, Basil found he had a new, lovely, luscious leaf, more terrific, trendy tendrils, and a beautiful big bunch of giant, juicy grapes. Stories are great, aren't they? A good story, like the ones Jesus told, can be enjoyed on so many levels. By young children, with no further explanation needed, as the teaching permeates down into the good soil. And as we mature, the deeper meanings take on new richness and significance. How can we be better at telling stories together in church? Stories that speak to modern parents, to teenagers, to an HR consultant, head teacher, property developer, or retired person. It is our young people that we must continually bear in mind. They are not the church of the future, but the church of today, a godly and hugely significant presence in their own generation, and all of us bear the responsibility to nurture them in God's ways, to introduce them to Him, and to remain humble enough to learn from them. Here are some of our church family children. Aren't they wonderful? I spoke to Anne, who has dedicated her life to teaching children. Anne started her teaching career in the 1960s and eventually became a deputy head at the Bollin School in Bowdon, and later head teacher at the Firs in Sale. Although she's been retired for a while now, she has retained her connection with the children of today through her grandchildren. I asked her to give us a snapshot of how techniques used in teaching children have changed over the decades. What would you say are the 2 or 3 most significant changes for the better during that time in education?
Well, one of the advantages of being very old is that you do see quite a lot of things. My original training was Frobel training, which is all based on play. And when I came out of college as a qualified teacher, there wasn't a great deal of play going on in a meaningful way in schools. And I would say that that has changed completely over the years, and the primary schools now are very playful places and very enjoyable places. And I think children are more confident than they used to be, more sure about what they're doing. And I think that there's a lovely buzz now in schools, which maybe wasn't there 60 years ago.
Well, it's really interesting. Certainly when I've been to schools and preschools recently, it's made me want to go back. They look so wonderful, don't they? The things they're doing are amazing.
Yeah, and I think we are producing very confident, secure children who know what they're doing and get on with it. And that the buzz that we have in school is really productive. But it's coupled with discipline and respect. And that seems to me a perfect combination.
And what do you think a modern day class of 7-year-olds would think if they were taken back 40, 50 years to a classroom?
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be so different. I mean, there would be a paucity of lovely things to do, and the equipment wouldn't be so attractive. And they would still be sitting in groups, I think. Well, some schools, of course, would have them in rows all facing to the front. Not sure what else that they would notice that was different. I mean, there were fierce teachers, and I suspect there are less of them now. I hope so.
I suppose teachers of every generation have done their very best to teach and have the children's best interests at heart, haven't they? It's just that culture has changed and what we think is now it's changed. Thank you, Anne. So how do you think the church of today can best reflect what you've seen in education in the ways it connects with young people? How can we do things?
Well, I think it's got to be grabbing children in exactly the same way that schooling is. I mean, one of the lovely things about seeing on the television news after lockdown was the enthusiasm with which the children were going back to school. You know, historically, there have always been children who haven't liked school and didn't want to go. And it struck me that during lockdown, they might have evaporated. They might not feel like that anymore. They might just think, oh, let me get back into school. It is so much fun. And I can see my friends. Well, I want them to feel like that when they come to church. So the same mixture of excitement and interest coupled with respect and responsibility.
Oh, that's brilliant. I don't think there's anything to add to that, Anne. That was just lovely, really lovely. Thank you ever so much for giving us your time and wisdom. And
I'm not sure about the wisdom, but thank you.
Well, wisdom honed over a good long time. Thank you ever so much. We're going to go on now to listen to the children praying. So I hope you enjoy these, Anne, and everybody else. Lovely prayers, children.
Thank you.
God, you're so big, thank you. We pray for our brave lifeboat crews. Please help people who are scared or in trouble. God helps us to love because this is the most important thing in the whole wide world. God, please keep us the right way up. God, help us listen to you. Please help us to make church brilliant for all ages.
Thanks everyone for your creative prayers from all over the country. We hope you've had a lovely half term. I hope this morning has inspired us all to think proactively about the kind of church family we want to belong to in this day and age. If Jesus taught us the importance of new wineskins for new wine, we would do well to listen. Let's complete the nautical theme this morning with that great song, My Lighthouse. In the roughest seas, God's love is our rock.
In my wrestling, in my doubts, in my failures, you won't walk out. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, you are the peace in my troubled sea. In the silence, you won't let go. In the questions, your truth will hold. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, you are the peace in my troubled sea. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I won't follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You carry me safe to shore.
Loving God, help us to find the material to make the new wineskins of our day. May the faith, spirit, finery and other elements of our wine that we have so long tended find new shapes and forms that meet the needs of your people and your creation in this time. Grant us your wisdom to preserve the essence of all you have blessed and given to us in your abundance. May we be generous and generative, passing on these treasures to a new generation, but allowing them a new way to evolve in your name. Help us, O God, to shed the old wineskins of things that no longer serve us or our ministry, to our new members or to your church. Help us to take risks, trusting in you. Break us out of brittleness that keeps us resistant or complacent. May we instead be renewed and expanded by the joy of your presence, surprising us in new ways. Lastly, O God, may this blending of old and new be a blessing to your people and your creation. May the wine of our lives outpoured be your love as a gift to all. We say the grace together. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all, evermore. Amen. I hope you have a really lovely week and we'll see you again next Sunday.